Hello, everybody! How's it going? Alecandstuff here, and it's high time we talk about sports. Okay, obviously not real-life sports or anything, but Nintendo Switch sports. The game has now been out for about 4 days by the time this video goes up, and it's given me plenty of time both on stream, follow me on Twitch for regular weekly streams, and in my own free time to gather my thoughts on the game thus far, and get an idea of why the conversation surrounding this game seems to be so mixed. So, what is the deal with Nintendo Switch Sports? Nintendo Switch Sports is the latest in Nintendo's line of sports simulating games, and the latest to have someone break their TV. Isn't it great? It feels like the Wii era again. Nature is healing. Anywho, Switch Sports is quite obviously the spiritual successor to the Wii Sports franchise, which sold decently well. So, to say expectations for games in the same vein from Nintendo are high might be a little bit of an understatement, and in today's video, we're going to look at all that Nintendo Switch Sports has to offer and see if we can't get to the bottom of why the reception has been as all over the place as it has. Now, to kick things off, of course, we gotta talk about the sports, right? Alright, so starting with volleyball. Volleyball is one of those sports that I was a little lukewarm on, not gonna lie, for the first couple of rounds. And for those of you that have been watching me on stream play this game, you probably already know that. I was definitely not shy about making my thoughts on volleyball known, and it was just one of those games that really just felt like a straight waggle fest the first time through, which is not a great game, or it's not a great feeling considering that this game's whole, selling point is that you're mimicking the motions of the sport that you're playing, and it's supposed to feel as one-to-one as possible, so didn't really have a great impression of volleyball upon first playthrough, but I will say, on day 2, right, so day 2 of our stream and me playing through all these sports again and getting prepared for recording this video, the game has actually kind of grown on me. I've come to realize that volleyball, unlike my previous impression, seems to be a lot more about the timing of your hits rather than, mimicking the moves and stuff like that, which is obviously still a part of it, but it's all about the timing in volleyball. So you have these different kinds of serves that you can do. You can do the regular one where you hit it with your forearms. I don't know what the moves are actually called, by the way. I don't play volleyball. I've never have in real life, but you got like the one where you hit it with your forearms and stuff, and then you've also got the ability to set the ball, which is preparing the ball for it to be spiked by your teammate, and then you could also be the person in the position of spiking the ball as well. So every time that you perfectly time one of these hits, the ball will get a multiplier, and the higher the multiplier, the faster the ball will go whenever you eventually spike it to the enemy's team. So that part of the game feels really, really good. It feels so cool to finally after getting all these chains set up and getting ready to spike the ball and finally spiking it, seeing it fly across the field and catching your enemy off guard. It feels so, so good. And then of course, on the other side of the fence, you've got the preparation, right? So if the other team is setting it up and you see, their multiplier going higher and higher, you start thinking to yourself like, oh no, I gotta prepare. This ball's about to go flying. And then once you do, and you're able to dive and save it and keep it in play, that also feels really, really good. So it feels good on both sides of the court, which is, really, really awesome considering that it's all about the timing and being prepared and calculation and stuff like that. So volleyball definitely has grown on me, and previously it was going to be one of my least favorite sports in the bunch, but now I would probably put it somewhere in the middle. So volleyball, really, really good. Badminton is another one that caught me off guard. Badminton is another one of those sports that, as far as I recall, wasn't in any previous Wii Sports title or anything like that. So it's one of the 3 actually in the bunch, as far as I'm aware, like I said, that were not in previous games. So badminton is one of the ones that I have never played before. I don't know much about real life badminton other than the ball looks like a bird flying through the air, which is a very interesting way to describe this sport. So anyway, it's kind of like tennis, right? So you hit the ball on either side of the court and it goes over a net, and you have these little rackets that you use to do that. Again, this is another one that's all about timing, but at all times you have a couple of options on how you can keep the ball in play. So you can do like a regular serve, you can do, I don't know what it's actually called, but you can hit the ball in a way to where it lands super close to the net on the other enemy's side. I Again, I don't know the terminology, so I'm just going to go with that. And another thing, like here's where the timing comes in, is if you hit the ball at a really weird angle, or if you just mess up your timing on the hit, but you still hit it, it goes to the enemy's side, you'll hear this little, like this little wiggle sound effect, and that is your enemy's cue to spike it. And you can still keep the ball in play if the enemy spikes onto you, but it's one of those things where you have to kind of keep paying attention to how the ball is served to you, because you definitely have the opportunity to spike it on your enemy and kind of catch them off guard in that way. And of course, if it gets spiked to you, you have the opportunity to kind of dive for it and, go full Hail Mary on it. If you're able to hit it, that's great. But you want to be really, really careful with your timing on each hit. So badminton, I like. It's not my favorite, but definitely still a pretty solid game overall. And then we've also got bowling, which it is far and above 100% predicted my favorite sport of the entire bunch. Bowling is the sport that I loved the most in Wii Sports, which is my most played out of the entire franchise. I played a ton of Wii Sports bowling. I even have fond memories of playing Wii Sports with my grandma, and my grandma was really, really good at Wii Sports bowling, and my whole family would gather around the TV. We'd all have like 4 Wiimotes going. We played a ton of Wii Sports bowling, so to say that I was looking forward to Nintendo Switch Sports bowling is, a little bit of an understatement. So, Wii Sports bowling definitely feels a little different though this time around. And I think that has a lot to do with how Switch Sports sort of registers motion in this game. Because if you're coming from Wii Sports bowling and then going directly to Switch Sports, it's going to feel a little different. And I'm not going to lie, I was feeling a little frustrated during the first couple of days of bowling in this game, just because I felt like, I'm doing all these motions and my ball is like, it's curving or something, or like it's going the completely wrong way, or it's not like going as full throttle. It's not being thrown with the same amount of force like I was expecting it to. And I think a real part of that equation is just learning the game and kind of understanding how motion relates and translates into Switch Sports itself. And what really helped me understand that was going into the single player mode. For the record, I've played almost this entire game online against random people. It's great. The online is awesome. But for bowling specifically, I found that I had to go into single player mode to get some practice in and really just kind of like go into my own and figure out, if I'm doing this, like how does that translate into the game and stuff. So if I'm talking a lot about bowling, it's because I really love the sport, and I'm hoping if anybody else out there is struggling with the same thing, me describing this now, hopefully this resonates with you and makes you realize that it's not on you. It's possible that it's not on you. So anyways, once I learned all of that, bowling has become easily, like I said, far and above my favorite sport in this entire game. The only thing I feel like that's missing in this whole bowling sport is 100-pin bowling from Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort, and obviously the previous titles. So I really miss Wii Sports bowling, the 100-pin bowling special mode that is strangely absent in this iteration of the sports franchise. And, it's great that we have special bowling. Not quite the same charm, though, for me at least. So it would be cool to see Nintendo add a 100-pin bowling mode to Switch Sports at some point in a later update or something. That'd be really cool. But yeah, Switch Sports bowling is just great. I love it. So moving on, soccer, right? So soccer, I'm gonna describe a similar scenario that I did with volleyball, but on day one, soccer really didn't grab me. I don't know why, just the game felt really slow or something, and I always felt like my stamina was super, just depleted all the time, and I felt like my character wasn't running fast enough. And after playing it a couple of times and really getting the idea of, what the whole point of the sport is and how it all works, I've come to realize that the sport itself is all about positioning and stamina management. So you can't be, running around the field and chasing the ball the whole time. You really gotta trust your teammates and kind of let them take the lead whenever they can. And, everyone has their role to play, in this game, which, as somebody who's never played soccer, maybe some of you have, I probably sound like a big doofus, right? Because that's probably a really obvious thing for people that play soccer in real life. So for whatever reason, it didn't click with me initially, and now I feel like soccer is definitely one of my favorites as far as the entire list of sports that we've got here goes. So soccer is another one that really just grew on me, and I love the visuals. I love the overtime mechanics and how once the game goes into overtime, everyone's goal gets wider, increasing the stakes and stuff like that. The only thing I wish for soccer is that the games were either longer or that the ball itself was flew further. Either make the games longer so we can score more goals, or make the ball travel further, is basically what I'm trying to say. So, anyway, soccer is great, despite all of that, though, I will say. I don't want to make it sound like I hate the sport or anything. Moving on, we've got Chambara, which is probably my second favorite sport of this entire package. I knew this going in because I played a lot of the beta for Switch Sports, and, you know, now that we can legally talk about it, Chambara is really, really fun. I love the 1 versus 1 idea of the sport as a whole, and I just really, really love how you can be looking at your enemy and watching how they're orienting their sword to block you, and using that information to kind of determine, okay, if they're blocking this way, I'm going to swing this way. And if I swing this way, immediately after, they're going to try and block me this way, so I'm going to use this and this. It's all about planning and timing and just reading your opponent's mind, getting in their head, you know? So on top of that, sword play is just really, really cool. The animations for it are awesome. The arena that it takes place in is really, really good. And Chambara overall is just awesome. I love the fact that you also have a couple of different sword options to choose from, thus giving you different ways to play. So my personal favorite is the charged sword, because if you block it with it a couple of times, you'll notice that the sword itself charges up, I don't even know what you would call it, charges up its special move, and then once that happens, the next strike that you have, you're able to hold the R button, and it unleashes a charge attack, which sends your opponent so much further back, and then of course, you know, that part of it is just really satisfying. So you've got a couple of other sword options. You've got standard sword and dual sword, which have their own pros and cons, but my personal favorite is the charged sword. So Chambara, I knew going in, was going to be one of my favorites, and it still is. So no surprise there. And then lastly is tennis. Now, much like Wii Sports Bowling, I played a ton of Wii Sports Tennis, and I'm unhappy. I'm sad to report that tennis in this game, for one reason or another, just does not feel like it has the same level of charm, and it doesn't quite pull me in quite as much as the original Wii Sports. I don't know why. And it's not a matter of, you know, me not playing it as much, because, you know, in the process of recording and preparing for this video, I played a lot of each sport, and tennis still just feels so meh to me, which is very disappointing, because tennis, like I said, was one of my favorites in Wii Sports, and honestly, I really don't have an explanation as to why, because, you know, it feels very similar to how you would expect tennis to operate. You serve the ball, you do the motion, you fling it in the air, and then you smack the ball, and then you go back and forth, and depending on which direction you swing the switch, like the Joy-Con, will determine where you serve the ball, and then you have two teammates on either side of the court, and, you know, you play with a clone of yourself if you're not playing with another person. So it's almost on paper like a 1-to-1 to Wii Sports Tennis, and for some reason or another, it doesn't feel the same. I don't know what it is. Maybe somebody in the comments can tell me exactly why that is, but for whatever reason, Switch Sports Tennis just does not do it for me. So maybe, you know, in like a couple weeks or a month or a year from now, my opinion will change on that, but for whatever reason, Switch Sports Tennis just doesn't feel the same. I will say that the courts I'll use this as an opportunity to talk about the game as a whole, I guess. The courts and arenas and settings for each sport are great. Spoko Square is just a wonderful, wonderful setting for this game. It feels very modern. I do like the look. I like how green and lush everything is. I love specifically the Chambara Stadium. I love how it's surrounded by water, and it's like in this own little arena thing. So the setting for Nintendo Switch Sports overall is really, really good. And now, sort of deviating away from the sports aspect of this game, we can also talk about the unlockables. So the unlockables in this game, you'll notice from some of the footage, are very slim. for the most part. And you can tell because a lot of the people that are playing online have similar items unlocked. And that's because the way that Nintendo has decided to make available unlocks for this game and customization options for this game is using this system of cards, and everyone has the same card every week, right? So since this is the first week, everyone has the same items to unlock, except it's to a point, right? Because recently, my friend Nintendo Fangirl and I, Sam, you guys have heard her voice on the channel and seen her around, we found out that not everybody gets the exact same items, right? So on a large scale, for the most part, everyone's going to get similar items, but they're going to be different in a couple of ways. So we found that her and I have similar items. So for instance, I have a blue face mask that's available that I can unlock for myself. She has a black one. And I have this really cool, like, purple, pinkish, sort of poppy color tracksuit. She has a red one, just a plain red one. I have this blue volleyball that I unlocked, and she has a different color one. So you see how, like, the items that you unlock are made available to the ones that are made available to everyone are by and large the same, just a little different. So I found that really, really interesting, and it's a system that, you know, for now feels okay. I worry that moving forward, you know, people will start to lose interest just because items aren't being unlocked enough and not enough customization options are made available. I feel like that might be a little bit of a turnoff for some people, especially considering the lackluster amount of items that are available right now. It's not really an issue for me just because I'm going to be playing a lot regardless, but I can see how that can turn off some people. So at the very least, I will say the Sportsmates themselves are really, really nice. I didn't expect to like them as much as I do. I was very much one of those people that was like, where are the Miis? Where the heck did the Miis go? The Miis are what made Wii Sports so good. But now that I see them in context, I feel the total opposite. Now I'm thinking the Sportsmates are the ones that look really, really good. The Miis are the ones that look weird. So interesting how my opinion has changed on that. So now that we've talked about the game as a whole, right? We've covered every sport, we've covered the unlocks, we've covered the game itself. What is it about this game that makes people so divided on this whole thing, right? And I feel like a lot of it just comes from the fact that this is a part of the Wii Sports franchise of games. People are going in expecting Wii Sports game and getting something totally different, right? And which is not really the game's fault or anything, right? Because from where I'm standing, this game's direction is completely different than that of Wii Sports or Wii Sports Resort or even Wii Sports Club, right? Again, for those of you that have played that one. So I don't really think that this is an issue of the game itself or of the game's content or anything like that, because what we have is really, really good. We have a set of 6 sports that all have their own strengths and weaknesses. And for me, I feel like this is a pretty solid starting point because we know coming later this year, we're also going to be getting some additional sports, right? And I think the rumor mill is that it's going to be golf, right? And then everything beyond that, we're not exactly sure if they're going to be planning on adding more sports like that or anything down the line. I would personally love to see baseball come back, but you know, well, we can all hope and dream for things like that, right? So anyway, I don't really feel like this is much of an issue for Switch Sports itself. I feel like this is something, it's just a matter of expectations, right? And if this game were called literally anything else, I don't really feel like people would have much of an issue. The fact that it's called Nintendo Switch Sports kind of alludes to the fact that this is a Wii Sports successor, and people are going in expecting that. And it's sort of, they share some similar qualities, but again, I feel like Switch Sports is going for something totally different here, which I feel like definitely works in its favor. I feel like Switch Sports definitely pulls off the whole modern sports, play online with random people, and just really sink your teeth into the gameplay of each sport, because I've been really, really enjoying that aspect of it. And I personally feel like that's what's going on here. But of course, those are just my thoughts on the game. And before we go, I'd love to pass the question over to you guys. What do you think of Nintendo Switch Sports, and which side of the fence are you on? Do you like the game? Do you feel like it doesn't have the same sort of charm as the Wii Sports games do? What is your favorite sport as well? Feel free to leave your thoughts down in the comments below, like and subscribe if you're new. I'd love to discuss with you all. Anyways, with all of that said, I'm alecandstuff. Do your best out there. I'm rooting for you, and I'll see you all again in the next video. Bye!